Welcome, everyone, to the latest edition of the Rural Minds webinar series. I'm Julie Lux, Vice President of Communications at Rural Minds, and we have a fascinating subject for you this evening. We are going to be talking about stigma in when it comes to mental health in rural communities and what some people have been doing to help break that stigma and provide mental health support and services to the people in their communities. Um, these are specifically farming communities, and what Rural Minds did recently. I mean, some of you may be, and if you're not familiar with the Rural Minds Resilience Program, I would encourage you to take some time later on, go to the Rural Minds website and look at this incredible resource. There's all kinds of information. All of it is absolutely free on a variety of different types of topics. And the latest addition to all of those topics that are very relevant when it comes to rural mental health is farmer resilience. And so we know we all appreciate the challenges that farmers face every day, but sadly, we also know that there is still stigma alive and well in many rural communities. And the two people that we are delighted to have with us this evening have been doing something, doing their part, and doing some fascinating things within their own communities, not only, as I said, to help to fight that stigma, but also to really provide some very valuable and useful support for their family and their friends and those living in those rural communities. But before we introduce our first speaker and get started, I have the usual reminders. You see some names up on your screen, but um, all of you watching, those of you who are watching, we will not show your names. We will not show your faces. We respect your anonymity, and we want you to feel comfortable watching and learning from the great information we have to share this during this webinar. However, that doesn't mean that you're entirely off the hook. We also would like you to participate by providing your questions. You can do that through the question at the bottom of your screen. Write in your question. Our folks will be the only ones that will see those, and then we will share some of those later on in the webinar. So we do want you to participate and encourage you to participate in that manner by sharing your questions with us. And I think you'll have some once you hear our speakers. So enough for me. Let's get started and introduce Jolie Foreman. Jolie has an organization that she created called Shelby County Cares. Shelby County is here. I'm so excited. I have a Missourian and a Kansan on our call tonight, and I'm here in Missouri, so I'm very excited that the Midwest, the heart of America, is contributing to rural mental health. And as I said, Jolie's program is called Shelby County Cares, and she is here to start out the program by telling us about that program, how it got started, what's happening, and some of the wonderful work that's going on. So, Jolie, welcome to the Rural Minds webinar. If you'd join me here, we'll turn the program over to you, and excited to hear more about the great work that you're doing in Shelby County.
Thank you so much, Julie. And thank you, everybody, for being here tonight. I'm very, very grateful. Like she said, my name is Jolie Foreman, and I am the Executive Director of Shelby County Cares. But before any of that, I am a farmer and I'm a mom. I'm also married to a farmer, and together we are raising eighth generation farmers. We do row crops and have cattle. We raise red Angus out here. In northeast Missouri is where I'm located. So I'm actually way up north corner, close to Iowa and Illinois. And our claim to fame is that we have no stoplights in the entire county. But because of Shelby County Cares, we now have a therapist in our town, in our community, which is very exciting. Over the years, I've done many things, but I can honestly say this has just been one of the most rewarding things that I've ever been able to do. And some of the greatest lessons that I've learned have came from kitchen tables and field days, county fairs, church basements, conversations with farm families, navigating these stressful and uncertain times that we've dealt with from the beginning of time. There's always been a challenge, and there will always be a challenge. So just trying to figure out a way to get ahead of that. one thing I've learned is that rural people care deeply, about everybody. I believe we all do. But the challenge isn't that people don't care. It's just a lot of people don't know how to start these conversations. They fear being judged if they do. So much of the work that we do here at Shelby County Cares focuses on creating like a natural space, natural opportunity to build connection and trust while reducing the stigma and helping people realize that they don't have to carry all of this alone. Um, the reason why we started this was actually because we had the highest rate of suicide per capita here in Shelby County. Um, and knowing that my family had been so impacted by it personally, I decided I had to create and figure out a way. And what better way than to peel back the layers and to truly try to navigate and find, an understanding and underlying reasoning behind so that we can be there before crisis occurs. Um, so it's been a lot of conversations, but we've had to get pretty creative. So I think throughout this next hour, we're going to be able to share some of those ways, and hopefully you guys can take some of that away and recreate it in your own communities.
That's awesome, Jolie. Before we move on, provide a little bit more detail on specifically what types of things that you do.
Yes, one of our so to step back on that a little bit, we knew the population, we knew the demographic, we knew who we needed to get to, but we also knew that was easier said than done. And so I sat down and had some really hard conversations with my husband and was like, what would work, and how can we get men to open up and men to talk? And it just kind of dawned on me, just the same way that we're doing it right here. Like I am asking and I am learning. But it was very imperative that I needed to start with the wife. I needed to start with the woman in the home, and do what I did and kind of and replicate it. So one of the things that I love to have freezer meals in the out in the freezer, because not only am I a farmer and have a full-time job on top of that and raising three kiddos, we also have baseball and dance. And so one of the best things is to have these meals. And a lot of us women, we carry that, weight, and we're responsible for taking those meals to the field oftentimes. And so I thought, let's create a meal prep, have women come together and talk. And what really developed was a base understanding there that we were not alone. How much we care deeply and how we each want to take care of our own families and our own communities. So we grew off of that, and it was like, okay, how can we add to this to take tools into their home? So we started doing different trainings, just different conversations. I took away from the trainings that I have had and gave them different tools, ways to ask questions in their own home, signs and symptoms to look for, just different approaches on how to have those conversations, but also resources for them to call. And what kind of happened out of that was, after that first one, establishing that trust with other women in the community, that grew that program, but through that, it grew the trust within their own homes. So then they started calling me, hey, I've seen this, I'm looking at this. Can you help me figure out, like, is there something here to worry about or not? Then, shortly after that, I had men calling, hey, my neighbor, he's got this issue and I'm kind of concerned and I'd really like to know, like, what can I do? What can you do actually? And then, through just navigating that conversation, they realized that they pretty much hold the key. We can go in and tell them a lot of things, but it's those people closest to it that are really going to be able to connect with them and make sure that they're okay in times of crisis.
You said two things that I think really hit home because it's things that we've been hearing about since Rural Minds started, and one of them is just that initial feeling that someone is not alone.
Yeah.
Because so many times I think people in crisis do feel like they're the only ones that have ever gone through something like this. And so having that and then opening up those conversations
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
have in your community you've been able to make such big strides through doing that. But interestingly enough, this is you also gave me a great segue, by the way, because interestingly enough, Jolie, you started with the women and the women
Yes.
kind of the help the wives and help get the husbands, the fathers, to open up. Our other guest here, Thomas Eisenbarth. Thomas, if you would like to join us, Thomas really focuses on the men. And so his organization, which is called Grounded Ag, is has focused on the fact that, and again, sometimes we'll talk about this a bit later, but this whole idea of stigmas maybe sometimes I'm guessing maybe tougher for the men maybe than it is the women, and that they're Thomas, you said something the other day we were chatting, which really hit home with me, and that was men are fixers. They want to fix the problem. So let's ask you to take a minute here. Tell us a little bit about Grounded Ag, where you are, how this got started, and some of the things that you're doing with your program. And then you, Jolie, and I'll get back together again and further this conversation. But first, give us some background on Grounded Ag.
Yep, I could not have thought of a better segue. Uh, you guys definitely had that planned out when Jolie was talking about the women, and I'll kind of bring a little bit of male perspective to the table. But nope, thank you very much for having me. My name's Thomas Eisenbarth, and I call Northeast Kansas home. And just kind of how I've ended up in this space. Uh, as a child, 3 and 4 years old, I had some pretty significant uh, mental challenges with a family member. An uncle made a permanent decision in 1997. And to have that as part of your childhood at kind of that key age, 3 and 4, where everything's why anyway, but just kind of the way that was handled in a small town, tight knit, kind of clicky situation, what have you. But we just kind of went back to work and everybody did the best that they could. But then fast forward to 2021, I had a sibling that also had some challenges, but he made a really, really good choice. He used the 988 resource, and I'm always a huge promoter of that 988 resource. I mean, he made a good choice there. But being the oldest and just kind of seeing the writing on the wall and some different things going on in my life, I finally said enough. So to be in a town of 700 and be a 30-year-old male involved in production agriculture and to seek out therapy, it made quite the waves in a small town. Just all the humorous stories kind of looking back. But I really dove in. I mean, both feet in the deep end on that, call it a healing journey, I guess, but that therapy journey. But I found myself, and I do find myself in a really rare spot to where learning about my nervous system and just biology and my physiology, and I mean, all neuroplasticity, like all the things that make us who we are on the opposite end, kind of on this end of the spectrum. But I'm still a Kansas farm kid. Grew up in the coffee shops, the sale barns, all the things. But it dawned on me right away how opposite these two ends of the spectrum are. And just kind of how my brain works. I have a natural ability to kind of lean on some metaphors and some analogies. So to take these two opposite ends of the spectrum and really be a bridge and a gap, kind of both ways, back and forth, to help kind of the therapy world understand what exactly we are seeing day to day in agriculture, but also to help agriculture understand, like, hey, this stuff, it's science. It's not scary. Uh, the stigma around it, like it's science. So to help agriculture kind of understand back to that therapy world is, like I said, kind of the rare spot that I've found myself in. But to really, I mean, we're really driving home and doing well with the awareness piece. But I kind of found myself in a spot. I think this next step, and we'll talk quite a bit about it through this next hour. I think this next step is some really practical application pieces to get to the farm and get to the ranch and really help people out. So,
Who better than a Kansas farm kid? You relate, you know the story, so you're probably the in many ways the ideal person as you are, Jolie, because you are, as you said, you're a farmer. You're doing this. You're also a farm wife. You all live this day to day. So who better to understand the situation that your friends and neighbors are going through? But we talk about stigma, and I'm going to ask both of you to talk a little bit from your perspectives. What is the stigma? And is the stigma different, do you think, for women as opposed to compared to men? So, and is the stigma still alive and well in rural America now that, as I told you both, one point I can remember talking about stigma when it came to mental health back in the 90s, and we're still talking about it in 2026. So, I'm hoping you're going to tell me some good news, but let's start with you, Jolie. Have your perspectives on stigma.
Oh, absolutely. And I grew up in that house. I mean, I definitely have had my own journey with mental health as well. And growing, I was like 13, and I really should. Our whole family had a tragedy, and we all should have gone to therapy. But it was we don't need that. We don't need that. Today, my dad will still today say that that was his biggest regret, that but that is what that came from his dad. It was a generational thing. He's learned so much from it, and we all did, end up getting therapy, but making it not scary. But absolutely, absolutely, the stigma is still there, and I do believe that it is different. You know, as a woman, I feel like we're given a little bit more leeway, or we're feely, or where the men that I've my brothers, my dad, my husband, but also the men that I've grown up with. It is this it's this, we're strong, we can fix it. We want to be the fixer. And they put themselves last. They worry about their crops and their kids way before themselves. And it's like, how can we get in and change that? But there is good news. I do feel like, I mean, this has been proof that the conversations are able to happen. But I do feel like the generations, my age and younger, are really more open and susceptible to like having these conversations, taking them into their home. Another thing we did is we work with teen mentors that go into the school. So it's a complete wraparound approach. So, and the reason we did that is because it is more normal. They're excited about it. We've already got 2 girls lined up to take the senior spots that graduated this year. And my family and household, we're normalizing those conversations in my home. So I'm hoping that by just normalizing it, realizing it's not such a scary topic, being able to explain it in a way that makes it understandable. But another thing, and we've talked about this, I think, before, that adds to that is there are no therapy offices. There's no doors to drive by to see it. So in that rural community, I think that really does add a layer, because in the city, you'll drive by other offices and what they're there for. They're a licensed clinical social worker. They are a therapy office. You can go through 3 counties up along 36 highway and never see any iota of a sign for it. So then you think, well, it must just be me. Where in this, when you live closer in the city and you do see more facilities and you do see, those office doors, you realize there wouldn't be all of these providers for just me. So I do think there's hope, but I absolutely do believe that there is still a deep-rooted stigma there.
Thomas, from the men's point of view, Jolie was talking about the fact that maybe we women are given a little bit more of a pass because we are allegedly more emotional, I guess, but men are the fixers. They're the ones that are supposed to be, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. So what's your impression?
I think first impressions are just like Jolie said, there is progress being made as far as just in like the work that I'm doing. The more people I talk to, the more people that really step forward. I mean, that vulnerability draws out vulnerability. So for like in my shoes to be a male and be 31 years old and to step out and talk about things, it gives a lot of permission. But I love that you keep talking about being a fixer. And then Jolie talked about kind of being able to relate things. And it's almost to me kind of a rebranding effort. So especially from the male perspective, because it really struck me. I've watched farmers and ranchers meticulously. Well, maybe not meticulously, depending on the farm. But if you're going to keep equipment running and keep a farm running, you have to maintain that equipment. And to be able to view mental health in the same lens as it's simply human maintenance of the nervous system and of our physiology. A farmer worth his weight in salt is not going to just pull his planter and his tractor out and start planting. He's going to go through, hopefully, his equipment manual. We'll check some tires, make sure there's some gas or some diesel in the tractor, change the oil probably. We'll grease up the tractor and the planter. We'll calibrate the planter, make sure everything's going. All that time and effort is put in as to avoid catastrophic failure in the middle of the field. I mean, if you run a tractor full bore and just don't take care of it, you don't grease anything, the sustainability and the longevity of that machine drastically decreases. And so I think to be able to look at the human side of agriculture as well in that same manner, I mean, just our simple things like our sleep, like being able to kind of maintenance ourselves is going to go a long ways, obviously, in keeping family operations going, but to also destigmatize what we've always kind of called mental health. But it's really sustainability in action and legacy in action. Because if we want to keep going and keep running, then there's got to be some maintenance about it. So,
I love that. I love that. You said on your website you have kind of a manual, a maintenance manual for people.
yep, the operator manual is kind of where I've ended up. Because, like I
Mhm.
said, farmers and kind of the male psyche, we're fixers, we're technical in nature, we're science, black and white. If there's a problem, I need to be able to troubleshoot it. I need to have workflow and just that fixer mentality, but to be able to kind of view ourselves in our nervous system in that manner, I think is going to be really powerful because we can talk about stress, long hours, all the things. But at the end of the day, the issue that we run into is a nervous system that is never given a chance to just relax. I mean, it's
Mhm.
pure biology. When we were cavemen swinging clubs at each other, that same that nervous system ramp up when a tiger saber-tooth tiger was chasing us. I mean, the cortisol dump, the adrenaline dump, and then when we would get away from that tiger, we could calm down. But if we look at the world of agriculture, we are being chased by a tiger
Mhm.
24/7, whether it's markets, the bankers calling about input prices, fertilizer, the seed salesman already wants to sell a seed. I mean, just this constant go, but we have to give ourselves a chance for our nervous systems to find some safety and stability somewhere.
Jolie, do you find that having that moment to take a breath to relieve the fight or flight reaction that I think that's a tremendous analogy. How can these conversations help be part of that taking a breath and getting a little bit of that relief?
I think it's a huge piece, and I think that it also shows that it's not it doesn't have to be hard. There's a lot of simple tips and tricks that can really change a day. And so not only do we provide them to the teens, we provide them to, the people that come to our groups, but we also post a lot, on our Facebook or website, just of different grounding techniques, different ways of breathing, box breathing, and how important, that is and how that can reset. But yeah, when that amygdala, I call her Amy, when she's ramped up and she's mad, we got our we've got to figure out a way to slow that down. And I have had multiple men now that I've held conversations with, and after just having pretty simple conversations, it gives them the ability to kind of structure it, put it in order, and be like, you know what, that breathing. I had a guy say, I can sleep better at night. I do it every night. I lay in bed. And then he's like, I think I can do that in the tractor too. I'm like, absolutely, we could do it anywhere. There's simple tricks that we can take, but it's so important to let that fight or flight pace, that constant pressure, the constant of it. And like, Thomas was saying, it's all day, every day, all year round. And then you add on top of it, you may or may not make money. Like we're going into this season knowing we're probably not, but they're still going to give 100% every day. And so just those little tricks that they really like. We've also have started taking out like meat sticks and hydration packs, and I included the box breathing and there's some different layers to it that you can do. Some things work for some that don't work for others. So we try to be creative and see what sticks with everybody.
Okay, tell us a little bit more about, you had mentioned these care packages that you take out. It started out with the meals for the freezer, but it's evolved into some other things now.
Yes, and that is so funny. I mean, the heart is wrapped around food, right? We love our food, we grow food. Um, so it's just a big part of our lives. But no, through having what started out as meal preps, then we did canning classes, and it was like the first year we're like, hey, let's just feed the farmers. Let's just find a way to say thank you. I know a simple thank you can go a long ways. I know since I was a little girl, I've heard my grandpa or dad say, there's nothing in life that's free. There's always a cost. And I wanted to do something that didn't have any strings attached. So me and a friend of mine, we cooked a bunch of pulled pork. We put it out there on Facebook. We gave out 100 we gave out to about 100 families, which was huge. That first year was huge. But the next year, so last year, we thought I guess that was year 3. We did something very small the first year, but last year we're like, what can we give back that is a resource and a tool? And I knew if I put just pamphlets and papers in there that they were going to throw them away with the trash. They were going to go out with that box food came in. And so again, we got creative and we put together a grit kit, which just kind of takes the whole total mind, body, spirit, diet, safe eyeglasses for safety, Tylenol packs, Band-Aids, tourniquet, different things in there, the electrolyte packets.
Oh,
But
yeah.
then on top of it, we added like a koozie cup with 988 on it. And we put in like a little decal with 988. And I knew that a lot of men up here were not going to be as excited just to put that on their tractor or, refrigerator, toolbox, whatever that might be. But I knew they would in honor of another farmer. And so I put a little blurb in there, like in honor of a farmer that you've lost. Because when in such a small community, every one of these losses, it impacts us all. It ripples. And it's so neat now to see tractors or trucks with their little grain dispenser, in the back and the 988 information with the tractor, the Shelby County Cares information on it. It's just really neat to see. But I knew that they would be willing to do it for somebody else. So that was kind of the thought to it. But there was also, gun locks in there. I'd set these things up at different like little fairs and things, and nobody would take them. They didn't want to even ask questions. But when I put them in that care package, when I put them in that, I got so many compliments about, hey, you've seen me, you know what it needs, you know what it takes, to get through harvest. These are things that I absolutely love. And so I asked a few about the gun locks. A lot of them was just like, I've been looking for these, or, I've been trying to find these, but it was included in, they didn't have to come get it. It was putting these materials in their hands. But then the community, the 4-H and the FFA kids came and wrote a whole bunch of thank you cards. We gave them out to over 250 farmers this year, and then also enough meals for their families. But the grit kits we gave to 250 farmers. And that has sparked so many conversations, not only with, the different dealers and dealerships and stuff in town, but it was like, this is so imperative that we invest in our producer. We put so much in the product. And this town thrives off of farmers. I mean, the farmers provide jobs for the whole community, or majority, the large part of the community.
But Thomas, now how does this resonate with you? Because this whole idea of maybe people not, and men not asking straight out, but if you provide these things in the right venue or the right way, does that make a difference? Do you see that in the work you're doing?
Yeah, it makes a huge difference, and especially in the work that I'm doing, because a lot of my work has been showing up as public speaking opportunities, workshops, and then dabbling in a little bit of consultation work. But it's all about how that message lands with the audience. And I see that a lot, like talking about where I've ended up on opposite ends of the spectrum. I mean, there's the powerful science and all the things that I've learned about and I continue to learn about. But agriculture is such a odd ecosystem socially, like just the trust component and having someone within that ecosystem translate and deliver that message has been extremely powerful. Because I mean, you can have all the answers in the world, but if they're not delivered in a way that resonates or is spoken in the same language as the desired audience, it's
Mhm.
obviously not going to work out. So it's been huge for me.
Yeah, it's huge.
And that's one of the things we've been hearing since the start of Rural Minds is that you have to have the person who understands
Hmm.
what the person is going through. And that, segues into, and Thomas, something you'd mentioned earlier, the fact that while you have great information and great experience, you're not a trained therapist. How do both of you know when it's time to help the individual, maybe, or the family that you're working with? How do you help them get to a professional? And considering that there aren't a lot of those resources available in your small communities, how can you help them
No,
to
I am glad you brought that up
Mhm.
because obviously I don't have letters behind my name. I'm not a therapist. I'm definitely not a doctor. But to be able to work upstream and to know the power that stress has, stress that's not taken care of or dealt with properly, that as you get closer to that cliff edge, yes, that is the work of a licensed doctor, therapist, all of those things. But if we can continue to work upstream and to deal with basic nervous system things, the stress, and to have positive, healthy coping mechanisms for that stress, we're going to be able to solve some of the issue that way. But for me personally, there's whether it's lived experience or just known facts, like the isolation piece is so important. Like if you see someone just kind of naturally start to isolate, and I see that myself sometimes too. Work gets heavy, you get busy, you start stacking up some sleepless nights, and you kind of withdraw socially. So I don't know, in small towns, whether it's the basketball game on Friday night, church on Sunday, like if you see or if you don't see someone that you usually see, that's usually kind of a key indicator. uh, some of the other ones are just things are different. Like if someone like your neighbor has always meticulously maintained the farmyard, that's always kind of a fun little game in agriculture. Who has the nicest farmyard, that type of deal. But any kind of change like that, like if they have a nice farmyard and then you drive by and you're just like, oh, like it hasn't been mowed in a while, some weed eating, trimming, all the things. Like just being able to pick up on those subtle differences, I think, is huge. And to me, that's usually goes from preventative to, hey, I'm going to approach that person and I'm just going to ask. I mean, the tough question that a lot of people are just scared to ask, but like, hey, are you okay? And it sounds like such a simple question, but when you're in that moment, that's a tough one because you're just not quite sure what you're going to get back to. But if you can ask that question, and it may have to be multiple times respectfully, but just like, hey, are you okay? Like, haven't seen you at church in a while, haven't seen you at a ball game. I know you're a huge football fan, yada, yada, yada. But the two things that I always remember to have that conversation, because that conversation is probably going to be the bridge maybe to some other resources. But if you can be vulnerable and if you can validate in that conversation, so I was thinking about it V squared, the two V's. If I
Mhm.
can validate and experience, like, hey, I'm human, it's okay to be where you're at. Like, we all struggle. It's okay. And then to be vulnerable and kind of really open up that conversation. So V squared, and then maybe talking about some resources. But that is a tough conversation to have.
And it takes some courage to have that conversation as well.
Yeah.
Jolie, you
Because,
mentioned your
oh, go
your
ahead.
I was to say you mentioned your tractors with the 988. Is that,
Yes.
having a resource like the 988 number, is that something that you think is beneficial for people, especially people in rural America who don't have they don't have the psychologist on staff, or, the clinic that they could potentially go to, that's right there in their community?
Yeah, absolutely. But you got to educate them. It's amazing to me how much has been out to promote it and how little people still know about it. That's one of the questions. We have a trivia night. There's one going on tonight, actually. And that's always one of the questions. And it never ceases to amaze, but it just shows how much more, work we have ahead of us of just telling them that 988 is not only for suicide, but any kind of crisis. And it could be for a parent that's worried about a child or a sibling or spouse. Just and I really try to encourage people just to call and talk and see what services that they have to provide. They've came a long ways. I know it's a fairly new program, but we kind of take a two-pronged approach. Like, one, we want to be there to help build a community, kind of come back to that community, um, where there's more connection before crisis occurs. But knowing that the reality of the world that we live in, that there's crisis is taking place every day. And so it's been neat to see, like, the doctor will call me and say, hey, this person gave me permission to call you. They would really like to navigate this, conversation, but they're not sure how. And so we've gotten kind of creative on, like, where we've met, but it's amazing that once the men do come in and they want to talk to me. So, Thomas, I think it's a positive thing. Like, don't sell yourself too short. Just because there's not letters behind the name does not mean that they want to talk to us. They want to talk to the person that's just like them, that they do know and that they do trust. That trust and messenger piece is huge. But when
Yeah,
they do,
it's the our world is spinning so fast. I mean, the
yes,
human condition and the health of a human is so dependent on human connection.
it
And
is.
I guess to kind of call it the old days, like I would always listen to my grandpa talk about like 5 or 6 like farmsteads on a section, like a mile section, and just Sunday dinners, card parties, just all the things. And it was like this own little perfect ecosystem, like call
Mm-hmm.
it the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And I mean, in agriculture right now, we're as efficient as we've ever been at feeding the world. But there's also been some caveats to that efficiency. That one
Mm-hmm.
person, I mean, you're able to farm so much more ground, but we've kind of lost a lot of that natural human connection. Whether like it's coffee shops, the sale barn, I mean, stopping at the bank and just kind of shooting the breeze. But I always say we're the most connected we've ever been as a people, but we're also the most disconnected we've ever been. So just the other practical thing, and I mean, it's synthetic in a way, but just finding extra intentional excuses for that human connection and just kind of checking on your neighborhood too.
Yeah.
That
And I
neighborhood might
think,
be bigger, but yeah, Jolie, it sounds like this is exactly what you're doing with
oh
the
yeah.
events that you're putting on. So provide a little bit, some more examples of those.
Well, I mean, the one thing that was kind of spinning in my head when he started talking was the fact that that connection, and how we have made it so easy to get your tractor serviced and never see a service tech. So that's one thing that we've got a John Deere dealer and a Case IH dealer in the neighboring county over, and they have both tried really hard to go out and still do those service calls, make those face-to-face contacts and communications. Um, but we weren't designed to do this world alone. And so that is so huge. Um, But on the flip side of that, when those conversations do occur, I have to know when to pass it off. And when they start feeling comfortable and talking to me, there it can go two ways. It can go to the okay, let's break these things down, kind of fit, so this huge big problem, let's chunk it down and really dissect like what we can control, what we can't, and just having that conversation, you see the pressure release. But I've also had conversations where it's like, okay, that this is more extreme, and we are gonna. Can we make that call? Can we call your doctor? I've gone to the doctor's office with two men, and they're like, I couldn't do it without you. I couldn't have said it out loud without you by my side. And so to navigate that, but then they get that encouragement and courage. So all of the events and stuff that we do, minus the meal prep, we don't make any, there's no profit really off of that. We do it as something just for the community to have. But all of the donations, we have a suicide awareness walk in September. We do the trivia on Thursday nights. All of those donations go to help pay for that therapy too, because that's also a barrier. A lot of the farmers up here don't have insurance. And so there is a local therapist that when she came in, she is also married to a farmer and knows that, how hard that can be for them and for her as the spouse. And so that's been really incredible to see. So every dime that we make goes back into, those services. And you don't have to be from our community. We don't care who you are. We just want to help. And so, knowing that time and distance and money are all barriers, those were things that I could chip away at. I can't fix this whole problem, but like, what can we do to make it a little bit better?
And every step, every single step, every
Yes.
person. I think that's, again, going back to the experience Rural Minds has had over the past few years. A lot of it is, and the people that Jeff talks to, and this is something I want to ask you about, Thomas, but it's not the one big group that he talks to. It's the individuals that come up to him after the speech
Mm-hmm.
talk, and which is, how this all started in the beginning. But when you go out and you speak to groups, Thomas, what are some of the biggest challenges that you hear um, from the folks that are dealing with these on a daily basis in rural communities?
I mean, just the basis of agriculture, if you really break it down foundationally, you are trying to make a livelihood in one of the most uncontrollable ways possible. If you think about weather, don't have any control over that. What people on a national and international front, what they say can change world markets in an instant. Definitely don't have control over that. I don't have control over what's going on a world front with fertilizer, beef prices, beef imports, just the laundry list of things that I do not have control over. It really narrows it down to just one piece that I do have control over, and that's how I treat my mind and how I treat my
Mm-hmm.
body and how I treat my emotional state. But that lack of control is, and then all the generational pressures that come along with blending family and business. I mean, if dad got upset tomorrow and decided to sell the whole place, I mean, some people could run into things with that. But every time I talk and the conversations that I have afterwards, it's the complete lack of control. It
Mm-hmm.
really is just the nature of the beast.
Mm-hmm.
Do you hear many people who are saying, or just kind of despairing and saying, I've had enough of this, I'm gonna, go do something else? And
Uh, I I don't, and it being in agriculture, and like Jolie was saying earlier, I mean, putting a seed in the ground and knowing that you're probably gonna lose money as the seed goes in the ground, uh, definitely a lot of sleepless nights. But at the end of the day, the legacy component is what keeps so many people going. I mean, I have four boys, and there's a lot of days, whether long hours, just all the things, being able to picture them doing, if they choose to do it,
Mm-hmm.
that for this lifestyle to be available to them, for a lot of people is the only thing that keeps you going. And that word legacy is sometimes that's about it.
Mhm.
Whoa. But, we all know how critical it is. Jolie, you seem to be agreeing there with what
Oh
Tom.
yeah, it's huge. We love to see things thrive. We love to see things grow. I mean, we don't just plant because it's a business. Like those we want our crops to do well. We want our cattle to do good. We want them to be healthy. We want them to be the best that they can be. They're like children almost. We love them. We've invested in them. That caring piece is so big, but there is so much out of our control. And so for me, I've started navigating a lot of conversations of we come home stressed, we come home tired. What are our children seeing? And what are they taking away? And how do we expect them to want to continue in this if they're seeing us tired, crabby, long hours and not enjoying life at all?
Mhm.
Um, and because it's very demanding, especially livestock. I feel like it is a daily, it's an everyday grind. And when it's just us and my father-in-law up here, and my son is 15 now. And so he's at this critical point where we don't want to put that pressure. We want him to make that decision. It's been very evident that he loves farming. It's like it's just bred in us. Um, and so we're hopeful that he would want to come back, but it may be our girls, and that would be awesome too. And maybe none of them want to. And so navigating that with my husband is one thing. It's like, oh, I don't know if I want to think about that. But also like, hey, we've got to show the positive sides. We've got to talk about, we've really got to be mindful and make this something that they want to see instead of it being just hard all the time.
You mentioned the legacy. What's the satisfaction for you at the end of the day?
Oh man, for me, it's for the legacy piece.
Hmm.
My grandma was one of the best people I've ever known. She wanted to make sure in her obituary that she was a farmer, and she was a heck of a farmer. Um, and I know what they did to get our land, and I'm forever grateful. I love going back home and stepping my feet into that dirt. You feel it's there. And if I can continue that and give it to my kids and know that my grandkids have it, it'd just be like, I want to honor my grandma.
Oh my gosh, that's so touching. That's so
Yeah.
moving. Thomas, is it you talked about legacy. Is it the same thing, passing this along, passing the satisfaction part of it along to your boys?
It is, and it's just one of the facts of farm life is so much life happens within the work. And so when I think about some of my favorite memories and just like good times, it was all immersed in the work. And to be able to blend those emotional time, just good emotions, and then there's just something about the satisfaction at the end of a day, just a hard day's work. I don't know if it's just a certain dopamine or what it is, but just there's I find extreme joy in the exhaustion at times too. So it's hopefully that makes sense.
It does,
Yeah,
it does, and I did
because
not
it's
grow
so
up.
productive.
Oh, I did not grow up in a farm. My husband comes from a farming background, but I've worked for a couple of agencies in my time that were focused on agriculture, and a lot of them it was farm, what we call farm kids, the ones who've grown up on a farm, raised on a farm that would come to work at the agency, and I will tell you, they had the always have had the strongest work ethic,
Mhm.
which is something that I greatly admire, and that's exactly what I can see that you all are instilling in your kids and your families. So personally, I think that's something we all should be whether respectful for, whether we are um whether we grew up in this or not. But let's talk practicality for just a minute here. I'm going to start with you, Thomas. What advice would you give to someone watching who is in a rural community and our farming community in particular and thinking, I want to do something. I want to help my community. What advice would you give them if they wanted to start a program, maybe like Grounded Ag or something similar, just to help the people in their communities?
Be bold is what I would say. Step out with courage and vulnerability. Just step out in your truth. Because for me personally, like to take that first step and to kind of talk about my journey a little bit, the people that came out of the woodwork and the other people that came forward, and I'm not saying it was because I started speaking up, but if you take that first step in it as a leader, especially in rural communities, because a lot of times the ag folks are the ones that work concession stands, serve at church, all the things. But as a community leader, if you take that first step courageously and vulnerably, you will be amazed at the amount of people and maybe just the people that do step forward and do the same thing. And that's when things get really special because when you take that first step by yourself, you feel really alone. And you're like, oh, I'm kind of the weird one out here. What's wrong with me? But then you start looking side to side and you're like, oh, like everyone else has kind of struggled with the same type of things maybe, and they're facing the same challenges. So just be bold, take that first step.
Awesome. Jolie, what would be, and then I have a couple more questions. I have a question for each of you, but Jolie, what would be your advice?
Oh my gosh, you said it perfectly there. It is be bold and have faith and trust that and know that one voice can ripple. Like when I started, it was this giant leap of faith, and I just thought, oh my gosh, is this going to work? Um, and it is working. And if you believe in it, and if you put your heart into it, and you put that, those people do come together, and that has been very incredible to see. Because just earlier today, a man and a wife came into my office. They've lived here for 4 or 5 years. I have never met them. She said she didn't get out very often. Um, he's a veteran, and he was asking about veteran programs, and this conversation just evolved into like, what do you do? And hey, can I help? I want to help with that. I think that's what I really need. I think those are the things that I need to make me feel better because they're urgent for that community. So that was really, really cool to see. But it's just people really want to do it. They just, where do you start? It's just,
Just
I don't know.
start.
It's like throwing a seed in the ground and trying, and we're going to
Yeah,
keep.
you talked about the ripple effect. I mean, growing up a farm kid, there's just something special about throwing rocks in a creek or throwing rocks in a pond. But I
Absolutely.
always use that analogy too. Just find the biggest rock you can pick up and just throw it. And it is so satisfying to watch those
It
That's
is.
ripples rip through. So
Be bold and do it with heart. I love that. Jolie, I'm going to start with you real quick here, because we got a couple, in fact, I've got a few here I don't want to miss out on. Could you speak to how our faith community in rural areas are providing support? So have you worked with local churches and faith organizations within your communities?
Absolutely. They were one of my first gatekeeper conversations that we had. And what happened, we trained them in the QPR specific to the churches that to take into they did it here, and then we've taken into several churches and done it, which they incorporated in with actual service or like service sermons. Sorry. So that was kind of neat, but it became a support for them too, because as my pastor had said, like, he's carried this weight alone. A lot of people go to him, they trust him,
Mhm.
and there's a vicarious trauma there, and he really needed support. And he was just so glad. He's like, oh my gosh, now we can do this together. So in our community, they've been really open. I know growing up in church, that conversation was not as easy to have. Um, it was a very, it was not a positive conversation. And then, when tragedy did strike our church, they didn't want to talk about it at all. And so since this community has been so impacted and affected, they're really wanting to know, oh my gosh, what can we do? And so we work very, very close. We're very lucky with our faith community.
That's awesome. How about you, Thomas?
I just think about kind of back to the ecosystem of a rural small town. I mean, life gets so busy and it's just go, go, go. But Sundays, I mean, for good reason, Sundays are just kind of a deep breath and a day of rest. And to have a group of people that have your back and vice versa on a Sunday, it goes back to that human connection piece too. It really
Mhm.
does. It's because we talk about the isolation piece quite a bit. Isolation in itself is bad enough, but agriculture gives us every opportunity for that isolation piece. I
Right.
mean, unless you go get groceries or go to the bank, whatever it is, but you may not get to town until that Sunday. And so those group of people really, really do kind of have your back in that sense too, just the human connection piece.
And they've been a huge support too. We utilize our church for their kitchen and do a lot of meals there. And several of the churches also store our freezer meals for families that are in need. So that's been really neat. Uh, uh, they've also done some fundraisers and stuff for us, but it is that community. So at Christmas time last year, they came to me with some older families and that hadn't been to church in a while, and that is, that's a sign in itself. And maybe it is just because they can't get out, but let's go check on them. So we took them, meals. uh, but in these small counties and towns, we know who's missing. There's no eyes on them. Hey, let's go check on them. And because of that simple act of kindness, and like just a small little decoration for Christmas just to bring cheer. We know a lot of it. They don't like to get all that stuff out anymore. And so it's like, okay, let's take a little Christmas cheer. Let's take a meal, and then each of the churches came back and said, they've started coming back to church. They fell off during COVID. A lot of people hadn't came back since then. And so it was kind of like hey, you came to me, you provided this thing. We were very grateful. And so that attendance came back, where it just goes back to taking care of your neighbor, checking on one another, just being, it really breaks down to just being a good human and being kind goes a
Well,
long, long way.
you were talking about isolation, and that's a great way to help to combat, Thomas, what you were talking about. And these are things that I think people, maybe many people, non-rural communities as well, think of as kind of the hallmarks. It's the people in rural communities who do take care of each other and look out for each other. And these are great, such wonderful examples. I'm going to very quickly, if each one of you, because I want to address another question from the good folks that are watching, a couple of strategies from each of you that you've seen work best for helping those people like you, trusted rural voices, to spread these conversations in ways that people are truly comfortable engaging with. So, just a couple of quick strategies from each of you.
For me personally, social media has been huge
Oh,
because, I mean, to do the work locally, but just to kind of watch that ripple effect happen, just to be kind of open and honest and vulnerable on social media and to watch those types of things happen. And then like through that social media it led to the creation of a website, which is groundedag.org. And to be able to use technology has helped me immensely just to kind of get the word out and kind of get some crazy wild ideas going.
a good side of social media, yes. And like you said,
Yes, absolutely.
being vulnerable, telling your story. Jolie, I think you have a website as well.
Yes, we have shelbycountycares.org, and we also utilize that. I am personally not on Facebook, but I have people that help me that help keep that up and keep me up to date with our account. And so we've gotten to where, like the last 2 months, last month we did send us it was raining. It was raining and raining and raining, and everybody was getting crabby. You could just feel the tension in the whole town. And so I was like, okay, we know that rainy days are here, so let's think of something positive and send us photos of either, where you're at with planting or like some rainy day stories. This month it was spring flowers and gardening. And then in June, we're going to do your favorite, like first memories. So what's happening is positive encouragement, positive feed, positive stories. Yeah.
Positive. It's wonderful. Well, unfortunately, our time is up. I cannot thank you both so much. Jolie Foreman, Thomas Eisenbarth, thank you so much. Please, anyone, please respond to our survey that you'll be receiving right after this webinar concludes, and go to the Rural Minds website to learn more about the offerings that we have and what you can do to help help Rural Minds as well. So thank you both. Thanks to everyone watching. Have a wonderful rest of your night.